It's been a pretty busy news week around the Ontario Hockey League, and it's only Tuesday. So, some of the news items from yesterday are kind of carrying over into today. I'm going to start things off by mentioning that Easton Cowan is back with the London Knights. I know that was big news for Toronto Maple Leaf fans, finding out that Cowan had been sent back to junior. And the news came after I posted my power rankings video where I mentioned that help is on the way for the London Knights with Denver Barkey and Oliver Bonk, and that Easton Cowan would probably be coming sooner rather than later. I didn't realize how soon that would be. So Easton Cowan will be back in the London Knights lineup. The Knights, of course, in action tomorrow. They're on the road against the Owen Sound Attack, and then they host the Barrie Colts on Friday. So the London Knights, of course, looking to turn their season around as it's been a bit of a slower start, but with the lineup and the talent they have on this squad, it won't be surprising to see the London Knights climb up the Western Conference standings. But just wanted to mention it here quickly in this news video that Easton Cowan is in fact back with the London Knights. Now, a big news story that came out yesterday was the report from Jeff Merrick that Quinton Musty was staying home in Hamburg, New York, awaiting a trade by the Sudbury Wolves. And as soon as that rumor came out, a few hours later, the Sudbury Wolves would actually issue a statement. It kind of caught me by surprise at first, but good on the Sudbury Wolves for addressing the situation right away and not letting this fester and acknowledging the fact that Quinton Musty has not returned to the city of Sudbury after he had been with the San Jose Sharks for training camp. And what really is surprising about this whole situation is how apparently Musty was in Sudbury before training camp with the San Jose Sharks. So a situation that's not similar to what we saw with Colby Barlow and Owen Sound. Barlow didn't even report to Owen Sound before going to the Winnipeg Jets training camp. Musty did. He went to Sudbury. All indications were that he would play for Sudbury this season. That's what the Wolves said in their statement, that they were fully planning to have Musty in their lineup. In fact, he's more than welcome to return, and they're not necessarily in a hurry to trade Quinton Musty, who would have been one of the top scorers in the Ontario Hockey League this season if he would have played the full 68-game schedule. And when you look at Quinton Musty's stats, last year he reached 43 goals in just 53 games of work, 102 points. So there's really no doubt what Quinton Musty means for the Sudbury Wolves organization. I know this season, they're not in contender status like last season, but this would have been a year for him to develop and grow. And in the statement, the team says that they have a new coaching staff in place, which can address the needs that he has for growth in his development to join the San Jose Sharks in the future. They point out they hired Scott Barney. They've got Drake Barahowski, Andrew Desjardins, who both have NHL experience on the bench, and that this is a season that they were looking to help Quinton Musty in his development. So it is interesting that a team would take this approach. Typically, we don't see teams issuing statements. I know with Colby Barlow, we never heard anything from the Owen Sound Attack until there was an actual trade. But for Sudbury, looking to get ahead of it, and who knows, we might have a trade to report in the coming days or in the coming weeks, or he might be sitting around until the OHL trade deadline. Because for the Sudbury Wolves, if they were to trade Quinton Musty now, they could get a package similar to what Owen Sound received with Colby Barlow. But if they waited until the trade deadline, that's when they could acquire a 16-year-old who's drafted in the first round of the 2024 OHL priority selection, which would help the team going forward for their development. So we'll have to wait and see what happens next. I do find it, I think this is a good idea for the Wolves to get ahead of it so they're not facing questions night in, night out about Quinton Musty. They laid it out. They said he's not reporting, but he is more than welcome to return to the Nickel City to wear the Wolves uniform. We'll now have to wait and see if that happens. They also added no further comment from them, so they have their official statement on Quinton Musty, and they're going to go from there. So I'll be following along with this to see when there is news about Quinton Musty, if he's moved, or what the Wolves do next with Quinton Musty. Now, there was an interesting article posted yesterday from Greg Cowan. He's a reporter for the Owen Sound Attack. He did a whole article outlining what led up to the Colby Barlow trade. It was really fascinating because the whole Colby Barlow situation is a fascinating one because he was this leader on and off the ice. And I know when I did the trade video, there was some comments down below of Owen Sound Attack fans who weren't too happy about Barlow's decision not to report to the team. So It's a very hard situation if you're a fan of the Owen Sound attack, seeing a player like Colby Barlow not want to report. And that first trip that he makes as an Oshawa general to the Bayshore, it's going to be very fascinating just to see the response from the fans. I would suspect there is going to be some booing, but if they do any sort of tributes, I'm sure there'll be some applause because Colby Barlow, he did have a pretty solid career as a member of the Owen Sound attack. It's just really unfortunate that it ended the way it did. But what was really interesting is that Dale DeGray, the general manager, said he heard from media, from fans, from other general managers that Colby Barlow wasn't going to return to Owen Sound and didn't want to be a member of the attack. But for DeGray, he said he heard from everyone else. The only person he hadn't heard from was Colby Barlow. And he waited until he heard from the player before actually making the trade with the Oshawa Generals. So DeGray holding out. He wanted to hear it from Colby Barlow that he wasn't coming back and wanted a trade. And as soon as he did that, that's when the trade was in place. And it was 5 teams from the Eastern Conference, too. That was mentioned in the article that were interested in Barlow, but it was the Oshawa Generals who had the best package for the trade. And for DeGray, he was kind of looking for a trade similar to when Mason McTavish was traded from the Peterborough Petes to the Hamilton Bulldogs. That's when the Petes received Alex Ferrand and Jonathan Malee, along with 6 draft picks. So you can see the comparables when you look at the McTavish trade and the Barlow trade, because Owen Sound getting Tristan DeLille and David Bedkowski, 2 solid players. And I think this is going to help Owen Sound in the next couple of years to return to being a competitive team. But right now, it is still fresh, and it's hard for some Owen Sound attack fans who are, surprised by Barlow's decision, and others who are frustrated by Barlow's decision. But either way, fascinating article by Greg Cowan, and I just wanted to share that here on the channel. The CHL top 10 rankings were released this morning. There are still 4 teams on the ranking, but we have a new team that's made the board from the Ontario Hockey League. First things first, the Brampton Steelheads for the second week in a row, number 1 in the Canadian Hockey League in the CHL top 10 rankings. No surprise there, just the talent on that team. However, that was a tough loss on Sunday against the Niagara IceDogs. Niagara really just figuring a way to shut down the offense of the Brampton Steelheads. Even though they scored 18 seconds into the game, Niagara able to settle down and pull off the victory. And because of that, Niagara getting some recognition from the Canadian Hockey League as the IceDogs are 8th in the CHL top 10 ranking. I can't remember the last time we saw Niagara in the CHL top 10, so very refreshing to see. The Saginaw Spirit, they're still on the top 10 at 5th. And the London Knights, they dropped to 10th overall. So even though they're off to a slow start, the Central Scouting and the Canadian Hockey League still recognizing there's a lot of good talent on this London Knights team. So that's likely why the London Knights are still 10th in the CHL top 10 ranking. So I just wanted to mention that. There was also a trade yesterday between the Kingston Frontenacs and the Kitchener Rangers I wanted to touch on. Jakub Chromiak, he is traded from Kingston to Kitchener, along with Sault Ste. Marie's 8th round pick in 2026. In return, Kingston receives Kitchener's 7th round pick in 2028, along with a conditional 8th round pick in 2027. And that condition is based on if Chromiak does suit up for the Kitchener Rangers. And if he does, then that pick will be upgraded. And it is interesting just to see the return Kingston gets for Chromiak, because they acquired him from the Sudbury Wolves a year ago. And when they traded for Chromiak, they sent a 2nd, a 4th, and a 6th round pick for Sudbury. So I know Chromiak's a tougher player to trade because he's an import. The Kingston Frontenacs actually had 3 imports on their roster to start the season. You had Thomas Urinen, who they acquired during the offseason from Ottawa, along with Emil Pianiemi. Easy enough for me to say. But because you're only allowed to have 2 imports on your roster, that's how Chromiak became available. And since the Kitchener Rangers had a vacancy in those positions, they could acquire his playing rights. Now we'll just have to wait and see if Chromiak does dress and report for the Kitchener Rangers. Last year in 55 games, Chromiak 5 goals, 14 assists, good for 19 points. That was split between Sudbury and Kingston, although he only appeared in 7 games last year for the Sudbury Wolves. The bulk of his time was with the Kingston Frontenacs, but he's a little on the smaller side for a defenseman. 5'11", 182 pounds, but he is still a talented defenseman, and we'll see how it works out for him. Kitchener has now made a couple of moves of late to add to depth. Of course, they acquired Chris Griszolia last week, and now adding Jakub Chromiak to the ranks. So that's how I see it from the booth. A lot of news items right now going around the Ontario Hockey League. Let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on any of these news items. Love the interaction. Thank you very much for all your support as this channel continues to grow. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.